Liz here with another lovely yin practice for you. So the only prop you might need is a cushion. So just grab a cushion, maybe a firm cushion if you have one, or a couple of soft cushions, and we will get going. I'm going to sit up on my cushion for the first exercise, just a little gentle neck shoulder stretch. So come to sit in a comfortable seat, cross-legged or kneeling, and we'll start on our right side. So let's just take our left hand side, put it somewhere just to the left, and then tip your left ear towards your left shoulder, and we're going to start to breathe here. Of course, we were already breathing. When I say breathe, what I'm talking about is we're going to find a more conscious way of breathing, which means that starting to breathe into the belly, starting to breathe into those places that so often that get neglected. So we quite often hold our stomach in unconsciously because we get told a lot, especially as children, hold your stomach in. And it becomes habitual. So let's just allow our stomachs to completely relax so that we can breathe deeply. Inhaling. Exhaling, just really allowing those deep exhalations to just take you a little bit further into your very gentle stretch here. So with yin, we're not doing anything, we're not making a stretch happen, we're just letting it happen. And we do that by coming to where the stretch feels comfortable rather than trying to come to a stretch we're not maybe ready to do. So we're just literally letting our left ear get as close to our left shoulder as it feels comfortable to do. And breathing here and just allowing the fascia, the ligaments, the tendons to soften and relax. And maybe for the last 30 seconds or so, if it feels okay on your neck, you can, if you want to, take your left hand and just very gently rest it somewhere towards your right ear. Just resting the hand rather than pulling. Just allowing that stretch to deepen a little more. And then using that same left hand to press your head very gently up to center and changing sides. So allowing your right ear to fall towards your right shoulder. Breathing deeply. And just allowing the head to grow nice and heavy. So the weight of the head is facilitating the stretch. So part of our nervous system is called our autonomic nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system is the system that governs organs and soft tissues. So it governs things like the heart and the stomach, all the major organs. And this is composed in itself of two things: the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. That's as scientific as I'm going to get, so don't worry. Parasympathetic nervous system is what we call the rest and digest system. So the parasympathetic nervous system is activated when we do things like deep breathing, gentle stretching, relaxation. What we're doing is we are really helping the function of our system, the function of our body. We're really helping it along. We're helping it to switch on, as it were. And so allowing our parasympathetic nervous system to switch on allows us to rest, allows us to find calm, allows us to find peace. If you did it on the first side, just taking your right hand this time very gently, resting it somewhere towards your left ear, and again, just not pulling, because pulling is doing and trying, resting and just allowing gravity to do its job. Taking a few more breaths here. And we're going to press the head back up to centre using our right hand very gently. Well done, everyone. And then we're going to come into a squat. So take your feet nice and wide. You can take the feet out to a kind of 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock position. And if your heels don't get to the floor, what you can do here is pop your cushion underneath the heels so you give yourself a little bit of support. And then bring the hands to heart center. And you can kind of rest the knees and the arms against each other, just so you find a little bit more stability. Breathing in, just allowing the hips to gently open here. So most of us will be more familiar with the sympathetic nervous system than the parasympathetic nervous system, because that is what we call the fight or flight, or more recently it started to call it the fight, flight or freeze. So in fight or flight, generally what's happened is that the adrenaline in our system has been triggered by some external threat. I use that word quite lightly. And when the sympathetic nervous system is triggered, the adrenaline kicks in and our body stops using anything that's not deemed necessary. So digestion, for example, slows down, the heart rate speeds up, because in theory the fight or flight response is triggered, or was triggered in the wild, by something like being chased by a tiger or coming under some threat, literally a threat to life. And there's a theory that many of us in this day and age, or we haven't quite, our nervous systems haven't quite evolved to keep up with the times. And so quite often what happens is that we get called to our boss's office and our nervous system will have the same response, you know, as if we were being hunted down with a spear or chased by a wild beast. Especially those of us who live in cities, in environments where there's a lot of people, a lot of machinery, a lot of traffic. What happens is that our sympathetic nervous system is triggered constantly, which means that we are constantly living in a state, some kind of state of fight or flight. Breathing in, breathing out. Deep breaths here for the last few moments. Very nice, everyone. Remembering that we want to exit these poses as gently as we are going into them. So take your hands to the floor. Drop your knees very gently down. We're going to come into Sphinx pose here. So Sphinx pose, we're going to come to lay down on our bellies. Take your pillow just in case. Coming to lay down on your belly and then bringing your elbows to the ground. Just underneath your shoulders, so we are making this Sphinx shape, hence the name Sphinx pose. And if you want to deepen the back bend slightly here, you can put your arms up on a cushion or on a bolster if you have something like that at home. And then breathing deeply, you can either stay here looking up, or you can let the head hang slightly if you want a little bit more of a stretch to the back of the neck. And then holding for time, which is very much a yin principle. In this particular style of yoga, we're holding the poses. We're actually not holding them that long this time. We're holding them for 2 minutes at a time. You could potentially hold them for much longer. And if you do feel at any point that you want to stay in a stretch for longer, please do feel free to pause the video. But otherwise we're going to stay for about 2 minutes in each pose. And the idea behind this style of yoga is that we're letting the stretch happen. We're not making it happen. We're not using the heart rate. We're not using the muscles. We are using the breath. And we're gently stretching into the ligaments, the tissues, the fascia. And in turn, this is helping to stimulate that rest and digest process. So we're starting to switch to kind of the opposite of how we're used to doing things, how we're used to living. want to work with an edge in this style of yoga. So we do want to feel something, but we certainly don't want to feel any kind of pressure or stretching that is too intense. If anything feels too much, please do back off. And again, gently exiting this pose, you can just take your hands underneath your shoulders and just very gently press your way back. We're going to find our way into a child's pose. We're going to just take our knees nice and wide, sink the chest down, and you can either rest your hands or rest your head on your hands. You can take the hands out in front of you, or you can take them alongside you, whatever feels most comfortable for you. Allowing gravity to do its work, allowing your breath to do its work. And because we are so used to living in a kind of slightly adrenalized way, our society's ailments quite often reflect this. A lot of us have digestive issues, a lot of us have anxiety, a lot of us have problems sleeping. And as a general rule, this does come from living a lifestyle or living in a culture that tends to run on adrenaline and tends to run on this kind of fight or flight response, even if it's just in a very subtle way. That's why this particular style of yoga is so wonderful for anyone who has any kind of like anxiety or insomnia. As we rest here and as we relax here, we're just helping our body to do its job. And then we're going to exit pose. We're going to just, wherever our hands were, just bring them towards us so that we can very gently press our way back up to seated. And we're going to transition now to the wall. So just find any little bit of wall space here. We're going to stick our legs up the wall, so you don't need to have loads of space here. Just a little bit, but it's really, really good for the parasympathetic nervous system to have your legs above your head. So we're going to get our bum as close as we can to our little bit of wall space. And we're just going to swing our legs up the wall. We're going to work here to start off with just with a little bit of a hip opener. So we'll do a little pigeon at the wall. So we're just going to take our right leg, cross it over our left leg, making this little number 4 shape, and then just very, very gently start to send that right knee away from you, but nothing too intense. Make sure the foot is flexed just so that you can protect your knee joint. And this may already feel like a wonderful stretch. The other option is you can bring your foot a little bit further up if it already feels a bit intense. If you're the other way and you don't feel much at all here, you can start to just walk your left leg a little bit more down the wall, bending the knee slightly, so that you're controlling the stretch. So just come to where you feel something. And again, allow your breath to settle. Allow yourself to be completely received by the floor. Just checking in, making sure that your breathing is nice and steady. Your breathing becomes a little bit more strained here. That's definitely a sign that you are pushing your body a little bit too far, asking a little bit too much of it. So please do make sure that you back off a little bit. Make this stretch work for you. And I know that some people doing this video are pregnant, so if you're pregnant, depending on how big your bump is, you can prop your put some pillows underneath your head and shoulders just so you're slightly elevated and you're not completely lying on your back. If you're in earlier months of your pregnancy, and if you're heavier in your pregnancy, if you're further along in your pregnancy, you can put your back at the wall and put cushions underneath the legs, so you're kind of doing this in reverse. Use as many cushions as you feel comfortable as you'd like to keep your legs elevated. And noticing if maybe your body wants to go a little further into the stretch, you'll get signals, you'll kind of feel the stretch stop, and then you'll know you can go a little deeper. And then exiting the pose, just stretching that left leg back up the wall, uncrossing the legs, and doing this in reverse. So we're going to take our left leg, cross it over our right, making that figure 4 shape. Again, if you need to, you can put the leg further up, just working with a stretch for that outer left hip that feels good for you. And again, breathing here. And making sure that your face is relaxed, your shoulders are relaxed. Notice your reaction to being asked to hold still. Notice what it brings up in you. As I said, we are used to living in a much speedier pace of life. And sometimes being asked to just be slow and be still can produce quite a strong reaction in us. So we're just observing that. And the idea of yoga is that we are always making the unconscious conscious. So in observing our reactions to things and in observing our body's responses to things, we become aware, and awareness is the first step of any kind of change. And again, we're going to slide that right leg back up the wall, uncross the legs, and we're going to come in here into kind of like a supported shoulder stand. We are just going to keep our legs up the wall like this. Breathing deeply. Having your legs up the wall is a very, very soothing pose. Firstly, because you're actually allowing the blood to flow in the opposite direction. So you're giving your heart a little bit of a break here. It has to work quite hard to pump all that blood up and down the legs. That's why it's very relaxing. If you ever find yourself incredibly stressed out, it's really good to get your legs up the wall. It's also very good after a flight. You're draining all that lymph that tends to accumulate and causes puffiness. It's good in pregnancy. It's good post-flight. Anything that causes leg puffiness in the legs, this is a really good pose for. And when we begin to run on a different system, it's like a computer running on a different operating system. We can change our perspective, because if we're always responding to events and situations from a place of anxiety and nervous energy, we're not always making the best decisions for ourselves. We are kind of perpetuating this whole cycle of flight or fight or flight or freeze. When we respond to events and situations from a calm, centered place, we often find that our reactions are very, very different. And as the saying goes, we can't control anything in life. We can't even control ourselves most of the time, but we can control how we respond to them. And in shifting this perspective, shifting our bodies, shifting our mind into a different mode of being, we can change that reaction over time. To exit the wall, we are just going to bend our knees, slide our feet down the wall, and then very gently roll to one side. And then we're just going to lay here in Shavasana in relaxation for a couple of minutes. Again, just coming down into that Shavasana in a very relaxed way.
Allowing the shoulders to very gently roll underneath you so that the chest widens. You can allow the palms to face up. Allow the feet to flop out. We'll take a deep inhale through the nose. And we'll exhale with a nice big sigh through the mouth. And again, inhale. Exhale through the mouth. And you can do that as many times as you feel you need to. Just to find that nice relaxed state, remembering that it's on an exhalation that our muscles relax. And then when you feel you've done that enough, allow your breath to return to its normal rate now. So there's no consciousness to the breath, it's just gone back into the realm of the unconscious. Begin to scan through your body. Notice if you're still carrying any tension. Allow the soles of the feet to relax, the muscles, tendons through the feet to relax, the ankles to relax. Allow the knees to soften. Allow the hips to grow heavy. Relax the tummy, the abdomen and the chest. Relax the back, the spine. Shoulders melting down into the floor, the chest softening. Allow the elbows to grow heavy, the wrists to grow heavy, and each one of the fingers to relax. Relaxing the neck, allowing the head to grow heavy on the mat, and softening the space between the eyebrows, relaxing the jaw, relaxing the tongue away from the roof of the mouth. Cheeks soften. And feel free to stay here for as long as you need to. Do feel free to pause the video for as long as you need to. And then when you're ready, you can begin to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Move a little gentle movement into the hands, into the feet. Taking a nice stretch, bringing the arms up and over the head. Stretching out through the feet. And then very gently hugging the knees in towards you. And then whenever you're ready, rolling over onto the right hand side. Pressing your way up using the top hand, finding your way back to seated. And bringing the hands to heart center. Just take a moment to close the eyes and bow the head. Honouring our heart and honouring our heart's wisdom. And understanding that, as I said before, we have no control over events in the world. But we have control over how we respond to them. And that we can live from a heart-centered place and we can respond from a heart-centered place. And that sometimes this is our life's work. And thank you so much for practicing with me today. Namaste.